This podcast is brought to you by Convo Cloth, the official clothing apparel of the NBC podcast. For the latest apparel, please go to www.nothingbutconvos.com. Now, let's get into the latest episode of the NBC podcast with your boy, S. McCann. What's good, people?
Nothing like it.
It's the NBC podcast with your boy, S. McCann. This is episode 5, Philadelphia Eagles Offseason. And in this episode, I have two special guests, Nick R. and Pat C. Both are from Philly, and both are 4 for 4 guys. So let's get into it. Episode 5, Philadelphia Eagles Offseason. Yeah. This is episode 5, Philadelphia Eagles Offseason. I'm here with my special guests, Pat and Nick. Pat and Nick, just give me, an overview on how you guys became Eagles fans and where you guys are both from. Nick, you can start.
Okay, Nick, go first.
Yeah.
The older one.
All right. I've been an Eagles fan because I was born and raised South Philly, so it really wasn't I didn't pick the Eagles, just born into it. And I mean, for me, it's wherever you're born that should be your team. So it was an easy pick for me.
Yeah, I guess it was similar for me too. I grew up in Mayfair, also in Philly, and my grandfather and my old man would go down to Franklin Field and watch Eagles games. They were there for the when they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. It's a whole thing that I was born into, and until a couple of years ago, it was pretty frustrating. But now that we got a Super Bowl, it seems like it worked out.
Yeah. All right. So, I'll give you a little overview on how I became an Eagles fan. My mom was a diehard Cowboys fan growing up, and yeah, when I was born, I would watch Dallas games or whatever, but at the same time, Dallas was always on. So back in the 80s, Dallas. So every time when Dallas was on their run and winning championships and everything else, so every time Dallas would win on Sunday, I would have to wear this Dallas sweatsuit to school every Monday. Yo, oh my goodness. Yo, soon as I grew out of that suit, I was so happy. Man, it was just terrible, man. So I hate Dallas to the death because of my mom. And, once I start getting older and older, I live in the area, South Jersey. So whatever was on was Eagles was on. So that just became my team. And so, the Eagles is my team.
Just as a quick thing, why's your mom a diehard Cowboys fan?
Because of her brothers. So
okay.
She's the only female that was born with her brothers. So that's
Gotcha.
all they were into, Dallas. And basically back in the day, that's all was on. That's the only team that was on back in the day.
Yeah.
Basically was Dallas because that's the Americans team. So that's the reason why.
I went to college in the boonies in like northeast Pennsylvania, the Poconos, and so a lot of kids that I went to college with were from the middle of the state, like between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, where you kind of have a natural choice of do you go with Pittsburgh or do you go with Philly? But a lot of them ended up settling on the Dallas Cowboys because I think to that point where in the mid 90s, 93, 94, 95, 96, when they won those 3 Super Bowls, that was the team that was predominantly on Monday Night Football or whatever national broadcast you had. So there's like large swarms of Dallas Cowboys fans just throughout the middle of Pennsylvania because of that exact reason of it always being on television.
Yeah, it's it's so crazy, man.
It's
I
sad.
hate it. I hated that sweatsuit. So the Eagles off-season moves. So the first main move that really happened was the Darius Slay trade. It was for a third round pick, number 85, and a fifth round pick, number 166. So what do you guys view on this Darius Slay trade?
I guess I'll just continue to go first on these, Pat,
Okay.
so we don't have the confusion. I love the Slate trade. We needed a corner. It provided what we needed. My only worry, it's not even a worry, but like I work with a buddy who's from Michigan, so he's a Lions fan. He knows Slate. He says he does get dinged up a lot. And anyone who knows the Eagles these past couple of years, we've been dealing with way too many injuries. But even with the little bit of an injury worry, I would make that trade 10 out of 10 times. I think he's a really good number one corner. I think he's going to shut down number one receivers for us. It could make our other corner's job a little tougher because it could just be like the old Namdi, not when Namdi was on our team before Oakland, where it just stay away from Slay's side and attack the other. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But otherwise, I love the trade. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Nick, you weren't concerned about the draft capital that they kind of had to give up, especially with the opportunity to go after Byron Jones out there?
So no, only because, and Sam knows how I feel with Howie. I don't trust Howie with drafting anyway.
Okay.
Kind of just like give up some of the picks if we have to get a guy that I've seen proven, because I don't trust what he's going to do. And as we're going to get into later with some of his picks, I don't trust him.
Are you wearing a Jalen Hurts Eagles jersey right now as we speak?
No, it's still in. No.
Yeah, the draft capital. You had to give that up for him, as long if you didn't give up a number 1 and number 2, I was fine with whatever they gave up for Darius Slay.
I also was fine with the trade. I thought it was a great trade, and I also loved the extension that they signed to him. It's appropriate for the corner market considering a player of Slay's caliber. The thing that I just think about draft capital is the entire lead up to this whole offseason was that the Eagles needed to make a commitment toward getting younger, and that all of these draft picks that they had accrued over the last couple of years, be it compensatory picks and just their own picks and trades, was an aim towards making that big youth movement to kind of bring in the next generation of Eagles teams behind them. And that third and the fifth round pick seemed to kind of go against that grain or that theory that we were going to do that. I think the more so that I wouldn't have been so jammed up about the third and the fifth, which again I'm not. I like Slay as a player. Is the wasted fourth round pick on Avery from the previous year, getting that defensive end that you ultimately didn't really bring into the fold and has kind of become an afterthought through this offseason.
Yeah.
That you burnt a pretty solid draft pick on a player that at this particular point kind of seems like an afterthought in the scheme.
Yeah.
But again, I liked the trade. I think it addressed the most important need that the Eagles had this offseason, and from all accounts, he seems like a stud. So I'm all in.
Yeah. So his deal was a 3-year, $50 million extension, and then he has an out year in 2020. So the first year in 2022 is his out year. So the first year this year, I guess he's still playing on his same deal, but he did, get the signing bonus or whatever. So to me, this deal was a team-friendly deal, basically, because you get a number 1 corner for the market price, basically, or a little bit under the market price, or whatever you want to call it. And then you have an out year in 2020. So if he doesn't work, 2022. So if he doesn't work out, you can cut ties with him. What do you guys think on that?
I liked the contract they gave him. I thought money was fine, right where it should be for his type of player at that position. I don't mind the out year because, like I said, if hopefully, knock on wood, it doesn't come up, but if his injuries creep up, we can get out of it if needed.
Yeah.
And then by 2022, you got to have confidence that Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas will be the all-pro level of corners that we drafted before. So we could probably cut ties them at that particular juncture, right?
Or another draft pick or something.
Please register on this podcast. That was a joke, and then I'm not still all in on Rasul Douglas and Sidney Jones.
Yeah, they trash. We know they trash.
Everyone's gonna know now that Pat is still all in on Sidney Jones this podcast just went straight down.
Oh man.
All right, so the next offseason moves was Jalen Mills, Roddy McLeod, Nate Sudfeld, Javon Hargraves, Hassan Ridgeway, Jatavius Brown, Will Parks, and Nicolette Roby Coleman. So these deals was basically all of them was 1 year deals except Javon Hargraves and Rodney McLeod was a 2 year deal. But how do you guys feel about these offseason acquisitions?
I mean, there was a lot of them, but I'll try and hit on them as I can remember them. So the Mills move, I don't mind. I do not think Mills is a great player, but I'm interested to see him at the safety because that's where I think he will be better.
Yeah.
And I kind of actually really like that he's a 1 year deal because if he's not, it's just like after this year, see ya.
Yeah.
I think he will be better as a safety than he was as a corner. So we'll see with that one. The Hargraves move is tough for me. I really like Hargraves as a player.
Yeah.
But I get why we brought him in. I'm actually excited to see him paired next to Fletcher Cox. But it's like you dumped all that money on him after you just dumped all that money on Malik Jackson.
Yeah.
And you have however much money you have on Fletcher Cox. That's a lot on your D tackle. And it's a lot of money we have invested on our defensive line altogether, which I don't think our defense line is really that good. It's a very good run-stopping defense line, but we don't get as much pressure from defense lines.
Yeah,
I
our
would
DNs
like to see.
is kind of trash.
So you're putting all that money on D tackles. It's tough. I do really think Hargraves is a good player. I'm kind of expecting Jackson to be gone after this year because of that. If you can do that and clear the cap from him, I'm more towards it. Who was the one? Will Parks, I like. We run 3 safeties anyway a lot. Good backup safety. McLeod, I don't hate McLeod. I also don't love McLeod.
Yeah.
But 2 year deal, not horrible. You can't get rid of all your starters and just renew. So I understand it. I'm hoping to see more. He's not a horrible player, but he's also not special. Like he's not like a difference maker.
Yeah.
Sudfeld, I mean, he's whatever. I actually wanted to see more of Sudfeld last year when he came back and we stuck with McCown. I love McCown, but I would have rather seen him and see what he could do. Am I forgetting any of the other signings?
No. The slot god. You forgot the slot god. And then Hassan Ridgeway. So Roby Coleman.
Roby Coleman, I haven't really paid too much attention to like tape wise, but from what I read, he should be really good in the slot. So I'm all for it. We need corner help. It was a little sad because I actually really liked LeBlanc, and I think LeBlanc is a slot only corner, but I'm not going to not upgrade just because I like LeBlanc.
Yeah.
And Ridgeway actually is a good player. So for depth, I'm all for it. But once again, we invested a lot in defensive tackles this year. So I'm curious to see how that rotation goes and how you play out with the cap in the years to come because of all the money invested in that position.
Yeah.
You knew Jalen Mills wasn't going to go anywhere. Jalen Mills is what's his name's dude. He's not. Jim Schwartz loves Jalen Mills, and Jim Schwartz gets his guys on defense, as it seems, over his tenure here at the Eagles. So you knew Jalen Mills was going to come back. I am optimistic at his chances at safety, and they require their safety in the Malcolm Jenkins mold to be able to play cornerback. So his background in that position certainly would be a strength. So I'm optimistic. Jalen Mills, McLeod was, again, I think stability in that backfield where you need to have somebody who had been back there before come back. And obviously they made the decision that Malcolm Jenkins wasn't worth the amount of money that he was asking for, and they moved on. I wonder if we're going to rue the day that we kind of let him go. It reminds me of another safety that we kind of cut ties with a couple of years ago, and it turned out to be a dry position for us for almost a decade.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit worried about that. I don't think Nate Sudfeld even is worth my time. Jason Hargrave, I think, is a great signing. I am incredibly excited about the Jason Hargrave or Javon Hargrave signing, because the entire purpose of the wide nine is to generate that pressure up front to kind of relieve the pressure on the secondary and the linebackers, because of it gives the quarterbacks a limited amount of time to make decisions and work through progression. And so the functionality of putting Hargrave in there, Jackson has the ability to move outside. They move Graham inside. And so they do have a lot of flexibility along that defensive line that I think that you can look at Hargrave as a defensive tackle, but other guys on the line are able to kind of go inside and move in outside. And so that ability, that flexibility kind of gives them a lot to work with. So I really am excited about that. And if I remember correctly, the Jackson deal runs out of guarantee money after this year. So to Nick's point, they can cut ties with them.
Yeah.
But it's just, you look at what Hargrave did in a limited role in Pittsburgh, his productivity was off the charts. Like out of Fletcher Coxon, I know whenever you look at small sample sizes, it's difficult to judge. But when you're looking at that sort of productivity, I think it's pretty impressive. So I think to take him away from Pittsburgh, bring him in, he's mid-20s, he has plenty of years in front of him, was an incredible signing.
Yeah.
Ridgeway provides depth along the defensive line, and he's had some moments. So it's a really low risk, low reward deal that he provides some depth behind your defensive tackles. Jatavius Brown, I don't know. It seems like every single year they sign a linebacker and they talk about him potentially working out, and he goes like a Corey Nelson and they cut him before the start of the year. So I guess I'm not really too excited about that. I agree with the Will Parks signing that the Eagles run a lot of three safeties out there. Corey Graham obviously filled that role for the first 2 years, and more recently we had Andrew Sendejo. Yeah. So he fills that role that obviously is important in the Eagles defense, and I'm excited about the Roby Coleman signing.
Yeah,
everything points to him being one of the best nickel cornerbacks in the entire league. And you spoke about Ravon LeBlanc, but you need to have a strong stable of cornerbacks, because to your point earlier, Slay has a history of being dinged up, and Avonte Maddox has injury history, and you need to have people that are going to be able to step up, and depth is the key in the NFL. And so to have a large group of cornerbacks you have confidence in that can kind of function in a lot of different roles is going to be key going forward when inevitably you deal with injuries throughout the season.
Yeah. So my thought on these off-season acquisitions, Jalen Mills, I knew he was coming back. I thought he was coming back as a cornerback, not a, safety, position. To me, I think Jalen Mills will be our starting quarterback opposite of Darius Slay, because he's better than what we have now on that other side. And to me, the other guys are too small, and we have corners that basically will get hurt. So Jalen Mills, he already has experience on that other side. I think that will be our starter on that right side. The Rodney McLeod safety, it's not a deal where you say, oh, he broke the bank or whatever. Just like Nick's point, he has stability in the defense. So basically, you can't cut everyone from the defense and bring someone new on. I think that we needed that veteran leadership. Nate Sudfeld, whatever. He's just, another body in camp that will throw the ball. The Javon Hargraves signing. I think that was a good signing because he's a young D tackle that's a beast, and he's going to be playing alongside Fletcher Cox. So it's either you're going to double Fletcher Cox, and these other people will get an opportunity to have one-on-one, to play one-on-one with these linemen, or you don't double Fletcher Cox and he's just going to go all crazy. The Hassan Ridgeway, like you guys said, that was just for depth, and that's cool with me. Jatavius Brown, the linebacker, I just think he's going to be on special teams. I don't see him being a impact linebacker, and I could be wrong. The Will Parks safety signing, I love this signing. He's a young guy. He was looking for big money. He didn't get it, and now he's going to play hard to get that long-term contract. And I just liked how he played in that role at, I guess, Denver. And to me, yes, Jalen Mills came back to play safety, but I think Will Parks can be that safety that Jalen Mills is coming to be or signed to be. The Roby Coleman signing, I love it. Just like you said, it's going to be a stability. You're going to have someone that played the slot, that has history and experience on just being a slot corner, and he's a beast. He's been a beast for years, and I just really love that signing. So let's go into the NFL draft. Not moving up in the draft and missing on CeeDee Lamb. How do you guys feel about that, Nick?
Well, I mean, it was like a double slap because Dallas ended up taking him. That I feel makes it hurt even more. I wasn't pissed we didn't move up. I think for me, what made it worse was after you don't move up, and then we drafted who we drafted. Now, I didn't do as much homework as I normally do in the draft.
Yeah.
So I don't know about Rager as much as other people, but I'm just going off of where I saw he was projected from a lot of the draft experts. And it seems like no expert that I saw had him rated as, I believe he was the fourth receiver taken by us. Nobody had him as the fourth. So it's just like, well, you're not going to move up and get one of those top three, but then you're just going to sit there and get so he was more like the 8th to 10th receiver, which again, I don't care we took him. I was like, well, couldn't we have moved back, maybe get some more picks?
Yeah.
And then it just, when we drafted him, and I was kind of like, who? Just gave me flashbacks of last year, JJ Arthagan. I'm like, who the hell is this? And
Yeah.
he did not show up at all. So not trading up, I'm not too mad at, because we had a lot of needs, so I didn't want to give a lot. But I don't know, when you don't move up and then you sit there and take that guy. I'm going to do the wait and see approach. Hopefully he's a really good receiver, but it was, it really wasn't what most of the fans wanted to see.
Yeah.
I think I'm with Nick in that probably the most troubling part of it was the fact that Dallas went out and got him, and so we're obviously going to see him 2 times a year for however many years he plays there. And so if he turns into a great player, which people have projected him to be, then that's obviously going to be a little bit of a twist of the knife. I kind of agree with Nick on I thought the Rhaegar thing was a little bit of a reach. A lot of projections had him available in the second round, especially around when our pick was.
Yeah.
I really thought that they could have used multiple weapons, and so that idea of getting Justin Jefferson and then coming back and getting Rhaegar in the second round obviously would have been a lot more exciting, I think, for me and for a lot of fans to see that you picked up 2 new wide receivers.
Yeah.
But again, I have a hard time. I have a hard time trusting Howie Roseman and his drafting strategy. I think in the second round pick, I think this is much more evident he often pretends like he's the smartest guy in the room, and that the Eagles exist on a different plane than everyone else does. That they just are they're more intelligent than everyone. And so I wonder if this is another one of those manifestations that Howie Roseman is smarter than every other NFL GM or president or ownership, and that he's going to outthink everyone. And so I truly hope that I'm wrong. And what I've read and what I've watched of Rhaegar and the subsequent months since the draft, I've been impressed with. And he has a lot of functionality, his ability to move into different positions to be used in the slot and outside, and that's exciting. So I think a wait and see approach, obviously, with all draft picks is the most prudent. But I just think there was something that could have been done that would have gotten us two offensive options this season, as opposed to just one. And we'll get into the second round next. But
yeah. So my thought, I could have sworn when I'm watching the draft, I could have sworn we was going to get Justin Jefferson. And then when they said Rager's name, I said, what? Are they? Hold on. So I had to go back and look up, do the YouTubes and do everything else. And then, like, Jalen Rager was maybe the seventh best or, sixth best receiver, throughout, the scouts and everything else. So he wasn't even on no one's radar at 21. And to me, the Eagles had a great trade partner in the Atlanta Falcons at 16 to draft, go ahead of Dallas and draft CeeDee Lamb, because the Atlanta Falcons, they selected A.J. Terrell from Clemson, and A.J. Terrell was not even on no one's radar to go at 16. From his performance in the national championship game where he was just getting cooked all over the field, no one had him nowhere near 16. So if we would have traded up to 16, we would have grabbed CeeDee Lamb. They would have had 21. They still would have got A.J. Terrell. Now, I don't know if we did have something in place with Atlanta and they wanted more compensation than Howie would have wanted to give up. But at the same time, everybody has doubts on how Howie can draft. And that was one of the doubts, like, why didn't you move up to 16? And, that's the question that we all would have. So,
But Sam, it goes back. Sorry to cut you off,
No,
but
go
Sam,
ahead.
it goes back to like them trading away draft capital,
Yeah.
and with Darius Slay, it cost a third and a fifth because they weren't able to get a deal done with Byron Jones, and they also lose a fourth the previous year, which is Art Avery, and so you start off with a certain amount of draft picks, and that gives you flexibility. But then when you get into the draft and you're trying to make this commitment to getting younger, and you need to start packaging these draft picks, and you sent away three of them already, the bank starts to get a little bit light.
Yeah. And so after 21, Jalen Rager, there were 4 wide receivers picked. So right after, at 22, Minnesota picked Justin Jefferson. At 25, the San Francisco 49ers picked Brandon Ayuk. At 33, in the second round, the Cincinnati Bengals picked T. Higgins, and at 34, the Indianapolis Colts selected Michael Pittman. To me, the best person or best receiver on this, or that went after Rager, would have been T. Higgins, because he had speed, he has the height, and his potential ceiling as being a receiver in the league. I think he has the potential to be a great receiver, but Justin Jefferson was the most accomplished between these, all of these people. So I don't know how this will bite us. Just like you guys said, it's a wait and see approach on, what might happen, but we'll see. So moving on to the second round.
If I can add in one thing
ahead.
about the Rhaegar real quick,
Yes.
it's worth noting that his previous year he dealt with absolutely abysmal quarterback play.
Yes.
So the previous year that I had all this success, he had over 1,000 yards receiving. He had a much better quarterback and a much better offense. And that last year, which probably impacted his draft stock, he dealt with a quarterback that was inferior to whatever he had dealt with before. So his draft capital could have lost because of the fact that he dealt with an inferior offense. So
Yeah.
that's worth noting as well.
And he has speed, but you can move him around. I'm not mad at the pick. It was just, just like Nick said, all of the fans was like, "Oh, what's going on?" You know what I mean? Because he wasn't on no one's radar. He is a good football player, and in this system, they might have him, be everything they want him to be, as giving him opportunities and everything else. But at the same time, we didn't see this coming. So
Yeah, and
go ahead.
the big with him is you just don't like. Even if he turns out to be a good player, there's always going to be, at least in the back of my mind, could we have got him later and then still got more?
Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone's really, after everyone's watched the tape and learned, I don't think people are really knocking him anymore. It's just where we took him, and it didn't feel like we really had to take him right then. So we got another player, and then took him later, or anything else. So it's also a little wary of, is he a true number one receiver, or is he a great complementary receiver?
Yeah.
Which I've heard some people say he's going to be a great two receiver, where we're going to need at number one.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see. So the second round, everybody knows that, we picked Jalen Hurts.
Who we draft again?
Jalen Hurts from, Oklahoma. Previously he was at Alabama. To me, this threw me off for real. I didn't see this coming at all. And do I think there were better options out there? Yes and no. At this 53, just like Nick said, I would rather get another weapon in a wide receiver at 53, and the person that I really wanted was Denzel Mims. But it was shocking. How do you guys feel about this Jalen Hurts selection?
That pick hurt me so much. I actually turned off the draft and did not turn it back on.
Quarterback factory.
I can't have. I don't care about Carson Wentz's injury history. I don't care. You do not take, when we have that many needs, you do not take a potential backup when you just handed your other quarterback a huge contract.
Huge.
And it's not even like Wentz is old yet. I don't see it. I don't agree with it. There was plenty of other positions we need. I don't think the Alabama safety was still there when we took Hurts, but I always thought we were going to move up to try and get him. So I really liked him.
Yeah.
But even if we just stayed there, anything else, and it does add on the fact with going Rhaegar first, we're all just, who the hell is this guy? Then you come back with Hurts next. I know you shouldn't look at it that way, but you can't not. But and then everyone's saying, well, we got him to be the Taysom Hill type. First of all, if you actually look over the full season of how much yards Hill actually did for the Saints, it's not much. It's like your third string running back yards. So you're not drafting that kind of player in the second round.
No.
And I'm not even sure how good of a quarterback he is overall anyway. So even if we're moving on from Wentz, I don't know if Hurts is the guy I want replacing him. I can't stand the pick. And sadly, all the stuff I said about how they go into the draft, that pick just epitomized it for me. I was like, well, this is exactly why I don't trust this guy to do anything with his draft picks. And guess what? I hope somehow it's wrong, but saying that, it's kind of like a lose-lose anyway. For this pick to be right for us, that means Wentz has to get hurt.
Yeah.
He replace him. I don't want to see that. or Wentz doesn't get hurt. Wentz is a great quarterback that I believe he is, and now that guy's just sitting there. Maybe we can trade him for what, a third, a fourth? We're going to get a second for him if he's not playing. So
Yeah.
I don't like this pick at all. The only way it becomes a good pick to me is if Wentz gets hurt or you move on from Wentz, which I don't want them to do. So I was not happy with this pick.
The only joy that I took from the Eagles drafting Jalen Hurts was watching sports media have to come up with a litany of reasons for why the Eagles selected Jalen Hurts. I believe at one point we got that it was a potential with COVID-19 response, that if
Yeah.
Carson Wentz got coronavirus and somehow no one else in the Eagles locker room got it, that they could replace Jalen Hurts and they would not miss a beat. But it was a bewildering pick. And I'm looking at the second round and who was taken after him. You got the defensive end from Iowa. We had talked about how they lack defensive end depth. AJ Epineza, who was originally a first round target, but then obviously didn't really perform well in his combine testing and stuff like that and kind of fell. But that's some defensive end. They have the safety out of Southern Illinois, Jeremy Chin, where you need defensive back help. There's a lot of people on that list. To Sam's point, Denzel Mims.
Yeah.
How exciting would it be if you couldn't even get Rager in the second round, to have Justin Jefferson and then you bring in Mims, who's a burner, and then you bring in two wide receivers? It just, across the board, it's bewildering. It really feeds into that narrative of the Eagles believing that they're smarter than everyone else and kind of outthinking themselves and taking someone that is just a maddening pick. And I think it also, and Jalen Hurts, I do think Jalen Hurts has the potential to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I feel for him because he's going into a situation that is, knowing Philadelphia. I was driving the other day and there was literally a debate going on WIP, long-time listener, first-time caller, and about whether or not it's still the right move to go with Nick Foles. And this is just adding kindling to that never-ending debate where people want to say that Carson Wentz isn't the right quarterback for this Eagles team, which he is. Can we please put that to bed?
Yeah, they need to put that to bed.
And they did the opposite of that. They basically dragged it back up, and we're right in the thick of it. And so I feel for Jalen Hurts because I think there's so many better situations for him. I feel for Carson Wentz because he's had to deal with this his entire career, and he finally had a good run at the end of the year last year, and he's one dirty hit away from possibly leading the Eagles to a playoff victory. And we're back at square one where we have a quarterback controversy and we wasted draft capital, and I don't even know what we're going to do with this. Yeah.
So the Wentz contract in 2022, that is a out year, if he gets hurt or, if something happens or whatever. They do have an out year, and you don't need to think about that. Like, they're thinking so far into, the future where you're hurting this team right now in the present, to me. So Carson's contract for this year, he'll be making $59.1 million, and he's the second highest paid in the league. So if you have the second highest paid player in the league, you don't draft a quarterback in the second round. You give him more help so you can justify him being the second highest paid player in the league. You don't draft someone that really can't help him, on the field as, a pass catcher. What do you guys think about that?
I agree completely. And I just want to, real quick before I forget this, I want to point out Pat said about the Eagles being the smartest. Both of you guys, were you so annoyed about when we drafted Jalen Hurts, the stupid grins on Allie and even Doug's face? And it made me lose some respect for Doug, because I wasn't a Doug fan. But they were so happy to get hurt. And I'm just like, what? Like, how are you idiots smiling at this pick. It really made me lose all faith in them with their knowledge on anything, that they were that excited for this pick that everyone else that I know doesn't like. So I already had a low opinion of you, Hal. You just went down. And now I got Doug smiling for what? But and then, like you said, Sam, to be worried about, if that's the other way of looking at it, the 2022, whatever the reason for it, you don't draft because you're scared of an injury. You're drafting scared, and that's not how you draft. Injuries can happen. It's a rough sport. They happen. They don't happen. Like Pat said, Wentz only got hurt this year because of a dirty hit. Otherwise, he played every game. He looked great in them. He had no help because all his other supporting cast got hurt, and the guy still got us to the playoffs. I don't know what more they want to see from this guy, but
I struggle because I think it's a valid point. You need to have two functioning quarterbacks in this league because it's such a volatile league where at any single snap, any single play, I mean, even a non-contact play, you can tear a hamstring or an ACL or whatever it ends up being, and then you need to go to your backup quarterback. I just think that to draft someone in that position for that contingency plan wasn't the best approach, especially when you had guys like, I don't know, I mean, Joe Flacco, who was available, who is from the area, who's proven that he knows how to play in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. And yeah, is he removed from those best years of his career? Yes, but Nick Foles also really wasn't riding in on his high horse in 2017 when they re-signed him. So in the past, you've had success with retread quarterbacks. Josh McCown had a good game for a 40-year-old man on one hamstring. And Nick Foles had obviously that one stretch of time in his career where he set the earth on fire. And if you continue to bring in veteran quarterbacks to provide support, you can use that second-round pick on some of those other options that we already mentioned. So it's just you need to have two quarterbacks, but you don't need to spend your second-round pick on that backup quarterback when there's other options that are available. I mean, I don't even have to get into the fact, and I don't know where they're at in their negotiations. You have other quarterbacks named Cam Newton and Joe Flacco and other people that are available out there. I just was going to
say Cam. Like, you could have got Cam. Like, right now, you could have waited. Like, you could have got a receiver at number 2 or whatever, and you could have waited until now to say, oh, let's take a look at Cam Newton.
Yeah. Even that idiot Dallas got their backup. I would have took Dalton as a backup. He's a backup.
Yeah.
Was Jameis Winston signed at the time of the draft?
No, he got signed.
Another quarterback
after.
that's out there.
Yeah,
another quarterback.
Yeah. Plenty of veteran quarterbacks who have a ton of starting experience that you get. Remember, these are backups. These are not guys we're going to want or your backup. And they went and wasted a second-round pick on a guy who hopefully, I mean, we're all hoping doesn't see the field. So,
correct.
Maybe your second-round pick doesn't see the field.
But the main key of this whole thing is all of these quarterbacks went to teams that had a number 1 quarterback, and they knew going in that they're going to be a backup. They know they're going to be a backup. So if they say, "Oh, we didn't know if we can get this guy, that guy, whatever," but you didn't even wait. You didn't even wait till free agency played out to even see what was going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you could have waited and say, "Oh, Cam Newton said he wanted to start, but now he doesn't." To me, Cam Newton is a good option for this 1 year.
I agree with you. And that's actually the only reason that I hesitated to mention Cam was because I think Cam in his mind right now still thinks that there's a starting job that's available for him. And I don't know that he would have jumped at the opportunity to sign as Carson Wentz's backup at this particular juncture. But I would welcome Cam Newton in literally I would welcome a stack of potatoes in that we could save that second-round pick and use it on something that's functional for this team today.
Agreed. And people talked about Hurts as a Taysom Hill role. You're telling me Cam can't fill that role?
Yeah.
You also they preach this quarterback factory mentality. Then if you're a quarterback factory, Nate Sudfeld has spent 3 years in your program, and you don't have confidence that he can step in. What's wrong with the factory if we can't produce a backup over 3 years?
Yeah, the factory. So let's go into that Eagles quarterback draft history, this little factory that they've been doing. So they drafted Kevin Cobb when McNabb was there. They drafted Nick Foles when Mike Vick was there. And they drafted Carson Wentz when they had Bradford. So they flipped Kevin Cobb for a second-round pick. Mike Vick, I think he just went. They didn't re-sign him. And then Bradford, they flipped for a first-round pick. And then when they traded McNabb, they flipped him for a second-round pick. But who knows what you can flip Jalen Hurts for? We don't know what the future will hold. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he goes out there and he's playing this Taysom Hill role, and then he hurts his knee, or you know what I'm saying? Like he hurts something where it's career ending. We don't know that. Like they're going on, oh, we might can flip him on. You can't build a team and say you might get something for him or he might be our future quarterback. No, I don't understand. So going on to the third round, we picked Davion Taylor.
Wait, Sam,
Yeah.
I before I mentioned, did you only list quarterbacks on there that we flipped for? Because there's some notable draft quarterbacks the Eagles have drafted that you've forgotten. One, Matt Barkley should be on that list.
Yeah, Matt
And
Barkley.
then remember last year we drafted a kid out of Northwestern, Clayton Thorson, and we didn't even hold on to him after training camp.
Yeah. No, I was just going down, you know, the Eagles' history of when they had a predominant number one and they got, you know, a quarterback.
Understood.
You know,
what they actually traded for.
What they actually
I'll give you
traded
guys
for.
a quick quiz for you. Do you remember they traded Kevin Kolb for Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and a second-round pick?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember who they used that second-round pick on?
I do not.
No.
He's a local kid.
I can't remember.
He was a safety out of Temple.
Oh yeah, I know. Now I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
he ended up signing with the Jets. Jaquan Jarrett.
Jarrett. Yep. Trash.
Yeah.
Jaquan.
He ended up having a pretty good career with the Jets.
Yeah, but with us, he was garbage.
Yeah. Jaquan Jarrett.
So going to the third round and the other rounds of the draft, I'm gonna just break down the names, and then I'm gonna just say my favorite pick of all of these rounds, because once you start going into, you know, the third round, fourth round, fifth, sixth, and seventh, you don't know how these guys might turn out. Like, yes, a third round pick should be a player that should be playing right away for you. And the fourth round pick should be a player that can get on the field, but you don't know that they might. So our third round pick was Javion Taylor, Colorado linebacker. Fourth round pick was Kayvon Wallace from Clemson, safety DB. Our fourth round pick was Jack Dritzel, Auburn, tackle. Our fifth round pick was John Hightower, Boise State wide receiver. Sixth round pick, Sean Bradley, local guy, Temple linebacker. Sixth round pick was Quez Watkins, Southern Miss. Sixth round pick was Prince, Auburn tackle. And our seventh round pick was Casey Toohill, Stanford outside linebacker / DN. My favorite pick from these rounds was Kayvon Wallace. I think that was the steal pick of, you know, the fourth round, and I guess our whole draft, you know, rounds that we drafted in. I think this dude is a stud. I think he's going to come in, and I think he's going to play right away as well, and that's why my inkling of Jalen Mills moving back to corner will happen, because you're going to have Will Parks and this guy, Kayvon Wallace, on the field where you want to move Mills back to the opposite corner of Darius Slay. What do you guys think about, you know, the draft picks throughout the other rounds?
Yeah, as I said, I was so angry I did turn it off, so I didn't get to see some of their footage, but I did like look. I will say that linebacker, I didn't know much about him, but I listened to Ray Didinger talk, and he actually said that was the best pick for where we got him for our whole draft. So
Yeah.
I've listened to Ray Didinger. I trust him. So I'm actually excited to see him. I know he doesn't have a lot of football. I don't
Experience.
think he played a ton
Yeah.
before this, but we need linebackers. I without getting into much, I can't stand Jim Schwartz and his reasoning for not liking linebackers. There's also some of the Eagles just don't value linebackers. We need them. I agree with Sam. I love the Wallace pick. I think he is, like you said, Sam, he could make, I'm forgetting his name, Mills back the corner.
Yeah.
Or if Mills doesn't work out, Mills just walks after this year. I think he is our safety of the future. I thought that was a great pick. And also I heard Ike Reese sing his praise. Ike Reese, another guy I like because me and him seem to agree on most stuff. So
Yeah.
the receivers we drafted, all I kept hearing is how fast they all are, which is good. I mean, you need speed, but I'm just like, well, I don't want a Madden team where we're just getting guys that are fast. Like, can they play? But I don't want to knock them either because I don't know enough about them. So I'm not trying to knock any of those receivers. Maybe they can. But just when all I heard was, oh, this guy ran a 4, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, good. They're all fast. Can they catch? Can they get open? Can they run a route? So it looked like they were just going, oh, let's get the fastest guys like the Raiders used to do. I can't think of that receiver a while ago the Raiders drafted. He just was they drafted him like 8th overall, and he couldn't catch anything. Oh, good, he's fast.
Yeah.
But I did actually like our later picks more than our first two. I like that linebacker, and I do really like Wallace. And the other linebacker, what'd you say his name was?
Sean Bradley from Temple.
Yeah, I heard pretty good things about him
Yeah.
too. I got a soft spot for linebacker, so whenever we get a linebacker, I'm really pulling for them. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
I'm happy with the back end of the draft.
The guy, the wide receiver you're thinking of is Darius Hayward-Bay, Nick.
Yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
Kid out of Maryland, yeah. He was, what's his name? Al Davis was obsessed with his 4.3 speed.
That is the
He
name.
couldn't catch. He had stone hands.
So the one thing that I'll add to that, actually, I have 2 points based on your thing. Ike Reese, and I understand it was a different sport. Ike Reese lost me at one particular juncture where he tried to convince me in year 2 that Jaleel Okafor was still the superior pick to Kristaps Porzingis. And that man spoke for an hour. And I know it's basketball, but Ike Reese lost me from following him after that hot take just for the rest of my life. But what I will say is the Kevon Wallace pick is by far what seems like the best pick these Eagles made during this draft. The kid was the captain of a Clemson team that was dominant throughout his entire time that he was there. He's already basically involved himself in the Philadelphia community. Have you seen the tattoo that he got
On his back?
That John is big.
I heard about it.
Yeah, I heard about it. I didn't see
he
it.
He sat for a minute for that one. But I kind of do like the back end of our draft picks. Like I like Driscoll. I like the offensive tackle out of Auburn.
Oh, Prince.
The Eagles talk about being a quarterback factory, but I think really they developed a lot of great offensive tackle and offensive guards and centers throughout. And if anything that held over from the Chip Kelly era was bringing, and I'm drawing a blank, but that offensive line coach out of Alabama, he was Stoutland.
Stoutland.
He was an incredible signing as a coach, and year in and year out, they put out one of the best offensive lines in all of football.
Yeah.
And he develops guys that come back in and they can step in when people get injured. And so anytime they draft depth offensive linemen, I always have a good feeling about his ability to develop them. I like the wide receiver picks. I like the idea they target speed. Nick made a good point that he doesn't know if they can get open or run routes or catch the balls. But in the past, we were drafting wide receivers that couldn't get open, run routes, or catch the balls, and they weren't even fast. So at least this will be a change of time. And again, you're right. It's the back end of the draft is always a crapshoot. You're just hoping to hit on 1 or 2 picks. But I at least could wrap my head around the logic of these draft picks, and I like the mentality of going out and picking positions of need, or if people fell to you in positions, you draft them because He didn't think they'd become available at that particular point. So the back end of the draft, I really kind of felt like Howie kind of hit his groove. Unfortunately, the best picks remain to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah. And so the roster construction of 2020, I think that Doug and Howie is trying to build our team to look like Kansas City with all the speed at receiver and then focus on all the tight ends or the two tight ends. Hill will be, I guess, Rager will be Hill, and then the other receiver will be Deshaun Jackson, and then I guess the slot will be, one of these, fast receivers that we drafted in the later rounds, and then you have, the tight end position being like a Kelsey, which is Ertz. So I think that our roster is kind of looking like Kansas City's construction. What do you guys think about that?
I agree. I think that's what they're trying to do. I don't agree necessarily that's what they should do. I've been saying for a while they should be watching a lot of tape of the Patriots offense when they had Gronk and Hernandez.
Yeah.
I think with our two tight ends, that's the best way to build around it. Then you get the shifty, speedy receivers and go from there. But, I mean, you can't fault anybody for going off of Kansas City's offense either. That's a great offense. But
Yeah.
I think, personally, we should be building around a two tight end set. We have two really good tight ends that are going to cause mismatches. And you kind of saw it towards the end of the year when all the receivers got hurt. They finally realized, hey, we can go to Ertz and Goddard, not just one or the other.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping they continue to do that. If they don't, as much as I don't want to do this, you got to move one of them then. But I'm all for go-to tight end sets, two receivers. That's why I didn't think we needed a ton of receivers. Like a lot for me, most of the time, I just want to see two receivers on the field. Now, I'm not saying all the time. You obviously can do on three sets, but
Yeah.
I like watching our tight ends out there. They're mismatches. And Ertz is the guy gets open, catch it. Yeah, afterwards he kind of just falls down, but Goddard looks like he could possibly be even better than Ertz. He's at least going to run some people over.
Yeah.
I don't trust his catching as much, but he's younger. But that's how I would build the offense, more around those two tight ends, and you go to those two receivers. And then you still got Sanders out of the backfield. Like, I actually like the offense. I think the offense should be able to move the ball as long as Doug calls the right plays.
Yeah.
And these players learn to hold on and catch the ball. But I think the offense is going to be good this
year. Yeah.
I don't agree necessarily that they were trying to copy the way that Kansas City runs their offense. I think that there was definitely a commitment to getting some speed on the roster. You could tell last year that was the attempt they made with Deshaun Jackson, and obviously what happened. But I think what was more important to them, and I think they're going to try to run their offense still through those two tight end sets, is the last year the offense was unable to get huge chunks of yards at any particular moment because they lacked the vertical threat that a Deshaun Jackson or potentially a Jalen Reagor or whoever offers. And so there was all this congestion surrounding Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz because none of the wide receivers could get downfield and get open. And so this commitment to speed, I think, was really a means to kind of open up the field, start to be able to get developed chunk plays, and not have to piece together these 12-play, 90-yard drives where you need to consistently perform on third and long or third and mid, and you can rip off 30, 40, 50 yards at a time. I do think that the offense is going to be really, really effective this year. I think that Carson Wentz is going to have as good an offensive weapon set that he's had since maybe 2017. I think that they've made a lot of changes in their offensive coaches and brought in a lot of people that came from different schools of thought. So obviously Doug was brought up under Andy and the West Coast offense, and so they have that basis. They brought in Scangrello, who came through the Shanahan tree, where they're running a lot of the stuff they ran out in San Francisco and then previously with the Redskins and the Broncos. They brought back Marty, and Marty, of course, was underneath Andy and came from the West Coast thing, but Marty spent some time in Baltimore, where they started to originally use Lamar Jackson as their quarterback for the last end of that year. And so he brings a little bit of that aspect. So I think that they're going to create a unique offense that fits their personnel, but it's going to feed from a lot of the successful offenses from the last couple of years, the Shanahan, the Baltimore operation, and the Andy Reid, Doug Peterson branch of West Coast offense. So I think it's going to be a conglomeration of a lot of different schools of thought. And Shanahan, if I'm not mistaken, is also a form of the West Coast offense. It's just a different form of it. So I think it's going to be a unique entity, but the commitment to speed to open up those plays, get bigger gains, and allow Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz to function a lot more effectively is going to produce, I think, a really good offense.
So, Nick, what is your view on Howie Roseman?
I don't trust Howie with pretty much anything other than maneuvering the cap. And then the same, I don't know if you remember, I texted you once. This was like a month ago now, so I can't remember exactly how the article was, but it actually hit on how bad our cap situation is, not this year, but following year.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I was really surprised because the only thing I really trust Howie with is maneuvering the cap. And I'm like, well, this guy kind of dug us into a bad cap situation. But I do know, like, next year's looks bad, but then he'll, like, restructure contract. But as far as evaluating, I don't trust him. I haven't seen him make a huge splash talent. Like yes, he's hit on some draft picks, but I mean, anybody can hit on some draft picks. It's going to happen. I just felt like I scratched my head at more of his picks than I was happy about them. Even his free agency moves, I don't like. And now I know this is easier to say now because Jeffrey became. I don't really know what happened with him, but like you re-upped him, and we all saw like he was obviously slow anyway, and he kind of was losing a little bit. I thought they did that a little early. Again, it's easier to say it now because now he's kind of like a negative influence in the room.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of his at all. I would like him to be fired. That's
You're a little harsh, I think, on Howie.
Yeah, no, I am. But
I get your issues, and obviously I've highlighted a bunch of that I've had throughout this conversation. The man created the 2017 Eagles that won the Super Bowl. He got us out from the crap that was left over after the Chip Kelly era. And do I think that he's the greatest drafter? No. Do I think Joe Douglas going to the Jets really hurt our ability to draft successfully? And we've had some questionable picks even with Joe Douglas, but Joe Douglas is a football guy and has had a long career of evaluating talent that I don't think Howie Roseman's had. I think Howie Roseman, like a lot of GMs, is a mixed bag, and you take the good with the bad. And we just talked about how we are very excited about this Eagles offense coming forward. And a lot of the pieces that are in place are because of Howie Roseman. So, I mean, does he deserve a lot of criticism and does he make questionable decisions? Absolutely. But he also deserves kudos when kudos is deserved. And this offense looks like it's going to be a very good offense. And he is a big part of that architecture, the developing and bringing all that talent together.
Yeah. I know I trashed him and I don't like it. He does do some good moves, obviously. And like you said, when he was able to get us out of that Chip Kelly trash that he left us with. But I don't think you could get someone that does what he does and hit on more of the picks, I feel. But he isn't the first guy I would fire. I would get rid of Swartz over Howie if that makes you feel a little bit better about how I trashed Howie.
Jim Schwartz ain't going nowhere unless he gets a head coaching job.
No, and I don't understand it. The guy. I will say sometimes I'm like, all right, you know what? The defense actually does play better than I thought with the talent-wise, but I mean, we don't generate a ton of turnovers. We don't generate a lot of sacks. I don't know what makes us want to. I guess we just don't want to be any worse. Maybe it's just me too, but I am not. I wasn't a fan of Schwartz when we got him. He wasn't good in Detroit. I didn't think.
His defenses were pretty consistently good in Detroit, Tennessee, and Buffalo.
The Bills, he was all right.
The line has to get pressure, which I'm be okay with if your line gets that pressure. But our line doesn't for the most point. Like, and I know a lot of people are going to do this. I'm not the biggest Brandon Graham fan. I don't hate the guy. I think he is the top end against the run, but I don't think he's ever had a 10 sack season. So I want my stud end being that guy. I want my end to get after the quarterback. And then when Graham's your number one, you got I can't think of his name right now, Barnett, thank you, who when we drafted him, people said he's a Brandon Graham type. I was like, well, great. That means he's not going to generate a ton of pressure. Yeah, he gets there sometimes. And Graham, love him always for the strip sack on Brady, but he's a guy who's, 8, 9 years in? I don't think he's ever had double-digit sack season. We got to upgrade that.
Yeah.
I'm not as critical as Brandon Graham as you are. Brandon Graham, if you look, and not to get too analytics based on you, but he generates pressure at a rate that is equitable to the best defensive end.
He just doesn't get sacked
in the NFL, and so a lot of people are starting to talk about whether or not sacks are really the best indicator of generating quarterback pressure in the NFL, because for as many times as you can make a move and get to the quarterback and create a sack, just as many times that quarterback steps up away from you when you generate that pressure and you fall into the hands of a defensive tackle or the other defensive end or a linebacker who just happens to be kind of in a gridlock with whatever offensive lineman he's battling. So sacks necessarily aren't really the best indicator of generating pressure. And if you follow the analytics of pressure generation, it seems like Brandon Graham, year in and year out, hurt, not hurt,
he's
is
on the top,
consistently getting pressure on the quarterback. Yeah. I would argue that maybe Derek Barnett maybe isn't the guy that they had anticipated and thought when they had drafted him. But again, he's also young, and I guess we kind of sometimes get into the habit of this is going to be the year for Derek Barnett, like we were with Zach Ertz, and he obviously eventually pulled it together that one year. Remember there was that series where we had Zach Ertz put together the most epic Decembers for 3 straight seasons, but then wasn't showing up for the first 3 months of the season.
Yeah.
It seems like we're in that same habit with Derek Barnett. This is the year. This is the year. This is the year, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. But I don't get the Brandon Graham criticism. I think he is one of the best defensive ends that exists in the NFL, and you're right, he is a dominant run defensive end, and he generates pass rush on a regular basis. So I'm all in on Brandon Graham.
Yeah. I know I thrashed him. I don't think he is one of the worst ends in the league. With Graham pair with Barnett, it doesn't work for me, because yes, Graham generates some pressure, but he doesn't get there. And if he's generating pressure and not getting there when those other guys can get there either, it's kind of well, I don't really care, because then the quarterback just slides over, completes that third down pass, and all right, good, he's generating pressure. They still got the ball. You got to get there for me sooner or later. And Graham, it's something I really like him. I like him as his personality. I love. I want him to be a little better. So I can just be all in on it. It's just it's been all this time, buddy. Get me 10 cents. And I'm sorry if you're not. For me personally, get out then. And I'd rather move Barnett over Graham, but we just drafted Barnett. He's not going to work just yet.
Yeah. So the Eagles are moving forward with Andre Dillard. To me, this is the move that they had to make. I know it was some, rumblings of Jason Peters coming back and this and that, but at the same time, like we all said, and just like Pat said, you gave up these draft compensations to move up in the draft to get this guy. So in the first round, so we have to play this guy. Do I think that he would be a good tackle? We don't know yet. We just have to see. But at the same time, if you paid what you paid to move up and get this guy, he was a first round pick, you have to play him. What do you got? What are your guys' thoughts on that, Nick?
I don't know how Dillard is yet. I don't hate the guy because we just didn't see enough. I thought little we saw him at left tackle, he looked all right to me. But I also didn't focus in on watching him, so maybe he was looking worse. I thought he did not look that good at right tackle when he was there. But I don't know. He looked fine to me, and it's weird the way the Eagles seem to talk, or the media talks about, like, we never seem to be all on board on Big V, and I was a big V fan. Other than when Ryan Kerrigan just stole his lunch money that one game, I thought the man had a very solid career for us. I thought he actually deserved more credit than he got here. I'm glad he got paid when he left. I think he deserved it. He was the left tackle in the Super Bowl. Both look pretty clean to me. I never had a problem with him, so I don't have a problem with Dillard either. And like Pat said earlier, our coach seems to be able to develop them. Love Jason Peters, but he's like 38, 39 now. I think they had to move on from him. I don't have a problem with sliding Dillard in there. I think he'll be all right.
Yeah.
Are we sure they've moved on from Jason Peters?
No,
We don't know.
Because
but,
he's still floating out there, and like it seems like every other day there's like some new article about like, is Jason Peters going to come back to the Eagles?
Yeah.
I'm hopeful for him. To Nick's point, the couple games that he played left tackle, he was pretty good. And they always say that the good sign of an offensive tackle is that you don't, or offensive lineman, is you don't notice them. And so he played pretty well at left tackle a couple games. He had a horrendous game at right tackle, and that's what's kind of on people's memory because that was the last game that he had started during that run. But I feel like you have to trust the coaches, and you have to trust that they are going to go forward with him, and they have confidence in him. To get back to the Vaitai thing, I don't know if you remember, they gave Vaitai a tight end or help on his side almost every single play when he was in there. And I'm exaggerating, obviously, every single play, but Vaitai received a lot of help on his side. And he was able to succeed because of that help and because Lane Johnson is probably the best right tackle in the NFL, right? So Lane Johnson never needs help on his side of the line. So I think Vaitai was for where he was drafted, the fifth round, if I'm not mistaken, was a great pick. And he provided a lot of depth, and he provided some starts when he needed them for the years. But you had to cut ties on Vaitai because you weren't going to pay him top left tackle money after drafting Dillard and needing to support him so many times during the times you had him start. I thought Vaitai was pretty impressive as a guard last year too.
Yeah,
so
he honestly was killing as a guard. I like him as a guard.
Siamalu came back and ended up having a really good year last year as a guard anyway, so I get him being expendable. But I think what Vaitai really offered you was flexibility and his ability to play multiple positions along the line that the Eagles obviously covet. And if you're going to pay him left tackle money, you got to be sure that he's the man at left tackle. And I don't think he was that guy.
Yeah. So there's been talks of, the Eagles looking into the veteran free agent market for a veteran running back. To me, I don't think they need a veteran running back on this team. They have one of the best young running backs in Miles Sanders. And I don't want him to be taken off the field this season. So I know they have Freeman as one of their people that they're talking to, and then there's Shady Talk. I don't want none of these two players to me because you're going to stunt Miles Sanders' growth, and I think Miles Sanders is a 3-down running back. And if he's tired, you can put in a Boston Scott or whoever else. But at the same time, I don't want Miles Sanders off the field. How do you guys feel about that?
I agree with you 100%. I really love Sanders. I'm not against bringing in a veteran as long as you're bringing him for decent money and they realize this is Sanders' team. You're not really getting carries unless he needs a breather. I also a big fan of Boston Scott. I like our running backs as is. I don't think we need to bring in anyone else. If they want to bring in a veteran, they can, but I just hope you're bringing them in just as a veteran presence, not to be stealing carries from Sanders. I agree with you, Sam.
Okay.
Sanders a 3-down back. I want to see him as much as you can. Let him continue to learn. But if they bring in one for the right price, and as long as they don't overuse them, I'll be okay with that also.
Yeah.
I agree that Miles Sanders needs to get the majority of the touches, and that Boston Scott needs to be utilized in that offense because he was just too dynamic at the end of that year to not give him a solid role in the offense going forward. I think that signing a veteran running back makes sense. And everything that I've read and I've heard is that the Eagles are committed to developing those young guys, and they just want to have a veteran presence in there for however many snaps they're going to do. It seems between the two of them at this particular juncture, Devonta Freeman still believes that he's a starting running back in the NFL and deserves more money than what the Eagles are willing to allot for this role that they have. So at this particular point, I think LaShawn makes sense from a monetary standpoint, from a standpoint of bringing him back into the fold and kind of healing those wounds after Chip kind of got rid of him. And there was obviously that bad blood between the Eagles and him for a little while. And also, LaShawn is coming from a situation in Kansas City where he wasn't the main man. In fact, he was inactive during the playoffs and didn't actually play a snap. And so he understands playing a role at this particular one because he had the experience from last year. So I think between the two of them, LaShawn makes the most sense to play. Also, LaShawn doesn't have the injury history that Devonta has.
Yeah.
So I really think that across a lot of different point of views, LaShawn, I think, makes the most sense to bring back between the two of them.
Yeah. So to close this pod out, the thoughts on the upcoming season. I think that the Eagles offense will be dynamic, and it could be a chance that Carson Wentz, if healthy, can be an MVP candidate. I think overall our record could be 11-5, winning the division. I don't know, barring any injuries, I can't look at that, but I think we have a good chance of being 11-5 team going into the playoffs. What do you guys think about that?
I agree with 11-5. We have a pretty tough schedule. I can't remember. I don't have the schedule in front. I can't remember the exact patch. There's a tough patch in there, but
yeah,
I mean, this team made the playoffs with so many injuries. I would be surprised and very upset if we do not get back there. I think we should win the division. I mean, I like the team as much. I know I come off negative sometimes, but I think we have a really good team. Again, I can't read it. We went to the playoffs with a crazy number of injuries on offense, and the offense still moved the ball. Not great, but it moved enough to make the playoffs. So you come back with a healthy team. We do have more depth now. I think they're a very good team. I also don't think there's any clear-cut juggernauts anymore in the NFL. So I don't see why we shouldn't be in the playoffs this year.
Pat,
you don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs are a juggernaut?
I'm sorry, I should have said in the NFL.
Okay. I was like, they look pretty damn good to me last year.
So their offense is great. Their defense can still be beat. But yes, the Chiefs. I meant to say NFC.
But to beat them, you need to score 65 points.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to say NFC.
I see a 10-6 record.
Okay.
I think that they're going to have a classic Eagles week where they lose somebody they shouldn't lose. And that stretch that you were referencing, Nick, was a week. They starting in October 4th. They go against the 49ers, the Steelers, and the Ravens back to back to back in a span of 14 days.
Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, that could really be 3 losses. And
It's brutal. It really is brutal.
Brutal.
And so I see 10-6. I see them, and this hasn't happened since 2004, where a team won the NFC 2 years in a row. I see them winning the NFC, and I think the offense is great. I wonder what's going to happen considering their lack of commitment to a linebackers. I mean, they're literally walking out Nate Jerry and TJ Edwards as their starting linebackers at this particular juncture. So I'm certainly worried about the defense, but I do think that they go 10-6, they make the playoffs, and when you're in there, you kind of see what happens. Is this the first year where they're going to have 7 seeds in the playoffs?
I don't think, but maybe.
Okay.
That might be it. I can't recollect if they will have
I don't
7.
think they're going to be in play for one of those for the first round bye, so it doesn't really matter at this particular juncture. But.
Yeah, I don't. I do agree with that.
Episode 5, that's a wrap, people. Until the next time, stay safe, give respect, and show love. 1. Make sure you go listen to all old and new NBC podcast episodes on all podcasting platforms. And please go to www.nothingbutconvos.com for the latest apparel.